Hey friends, so we're back for another episode of Katherine's Quarters. But first, arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. We have a fantastic show today. I'm so excited. I mean, we have a ton of NFL news. The NBA is coming back. We will talk about State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, and how they are using it to encourage and facilitate voting during this upcoming election. So let's get down to it. So the biggest news since the last episode of Katherine's Quarters, Cam Newton is headed to New England. The Panthers released Cam Newton after the end of the season. He's come off like a foot surgery this past season, 2 shoulder surgeries since 2016, 2017. There's a little concern about his health, but if Cam Newton can stay healthy, the Patriots might have a really, really great replacement for Tom Brady. I mean, I'm not saying that Cam Newton is Tom Brady, but let's be clear, Cam Newton is a former league MVP. And he led his team to the Super Bowl. So we'll see how Cam Newton fits into this offense and how it plays to his strengths. The biggest complaint with Tom Brady last year was that he didn't have anybody to throw to. So if they ever lost a game, it was, oh, Tom Brady didn't have anybody to throw to, blah, 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 right? But we'll see what Cam Newton can do with these guys. And also, like, the AFC East is not something where you take Tom Brady out of it and now everybody has a chance. Like, you would think that, but Cam Newton coming in could make them, contenders again. And I do honestly, truly believe that. I mean, we can talk about the Bills, and the Bills had a pretty good season last year. But I mean, as far as the rest of that division goes, like, no one's scared of them. The Patriots have a possible chance to make it to the playoffs. We'll see. And I mean, we know that the biggest story coming out of this season is going to be Tom Brady and Bill Belichick doing it on their own. Tom Brady down in Tampa and Bill Belichick obviously coaching Cam Newton. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but I certainly forgot that this past season, the Patriots got in a little bit of trouble because they had a film crew that was at the Bengals-Browns game in the beginning of December. They were taping the Bengals sideline. One, if you're taping the Bengals sideline, literally, why would you do that? The league finally handed down the punishment to the Patriots, and they are fining the Patriots $1.1 million, which is essentially the same amount of money that they're paying Cam on a 1-year deal. But then they're also getting stripped of a 3rd round pick in the 2021 draft. Seems like a slap on the wrist for illegally filming a sideline, but hey, take that L, that's fine. It's totally okay at this point. Like, what's 1.1 million to the Patriots organization? I think that the Patriots fans should be really excited about the prospect of Cam Newton being healthy and Cam Newton playing for them. In an offseason where they lost Tom Brady, they've come off of what could have been a great season but wasn't. I mean, they won 12 games last year, right? They had Tom Brady, they won 12 games, and people were talking about how bad their offense was. So I think that having a healthy Cam Newton should be a positive point for all Patriots fans. They should be ecstatic about it. If Cam Newton can stay healthy, this will be a great season for the Patriots, and they will almost not miss a beat since losing Tom Brady, right? But I mean, Tom Brady's gonna put in that work, so it looks like he doesn't miss a beat without Bill Belichick either. So it's gonna be interesting. This season is going to be tons of fun. Honestly, I'm just excited to see, like, there's so many moves that have been made, right, by all of these different teams. Like, Cam Newton going to the Patriots is like one of the biggest steals of the offseason. Aside from the Cardinals getting DeAndre Hopkins for literally like a cheap pick from the Texans, which is still like the most maddening thing to me, Cam Newton to the Patriots is a big deal. And I mean, who's not excited to see Patrick Mahomes in that offense be elite again? Who's not excited to see Lamar Jackson in that team do, repeat what they did last year and hopefully make it a little further? Like, football season is going to be so much fun this year. I just need it to come back like yesterday. So in other NFL news, Dak Prescott has signed his franchise tag. They still have until July 15th to come together and make a long-term deal happen. Let's be clear, we've been talking about this deal between the Cowboys and Dak Prescott since the beginning of last season, right? And like, it was one of those things where who has the leverage in what moment. And Dak started out the season really well, but then they went 8-8, and it's like, he didn't play well down the stretch. But I think that the Cowboys, they have a lot of weapons, right, on offense. They have Ezekiel Elliott, obviously, Tony Pollard, who has played really well behind Ezekiel Elliott. They got Amari Cooper. I think Gallup is a great player, and I don't really like talking positively about the Cowboys, but that's neither here nor there. The Cowboys just picked up Cedarian Lamb. I refuse to call him CD. Sedarian Lamb. They picked him up in the draft, and he is supposed to be some explosive. He was great in college. I think Sedarian will be fine. I actually think he'll be pretty great, which stresses me out. But I mean, if you think about all of the weapons on offense that they have, and then they added a couple of defensive players. Clinton Dix is going to be their safety. They picked up Dontari Poe as well, I believe. So they've added a couple of guys on defense. They have a really strong offense. Honestly, the Cowboys, again, like last year, they look really good on paper. I don't know that Dak's contract situation plays into any of this, but if Dak plays this season on the franchise tag and that he does well, he then has the leverage to go back and be like, so I did this for y'all, and now you have to do something for me. We will see how this whole contract situation pans out, but lastly, there is no new news about Colin Kaepernick and the potential of him playing during this coming football season, but there is news about him and Netflix partnering to do like a 6-part documentary series about his adolescent life, which I think would be interesting. I'm more interested in seeing Colin Kaepernick play in the National Football League. I'm also more interested in the owners apologizing to Colin Kaepernick. But, you know, hey, those things haven't happened yet, but we have a Netflix documentary that's potentially coming out soon. So we'll see how that goes, right? Guys, we get the NBA back. The reboot has been approved, even though there's coronavirus cases surging in Florida and a lot of other southern states because they don't know how to act. Like wearing a mask seems to be something that's like infringing on people's rights at this point. It's so dramatic. But either way, the NBA and the NBAPA came to a conclusion playing at Walt Disney World. All players and personnel will live in this like bubble essentially at Walt Disney World, and they will be tested daily. You know, there's like a whole plan, a whole comprehensive plan is in place. There's some concern from a few of the players about starting this season again because there's the social justice movement that is important to them and they want to make sure that they are lending their platforms to that. But I think that the NBA Reboot is possibly one of the biggest platforms that they'll be able to have, aside from like their own, you know, guys have TV shows, networks, and podcasts and all of that other stuff. But I think the NBA Restart is a way to use your voice in a way that, you know, reaches a lot of people. Basketball is a global sport, and a lot of people are still quarantined, like around the world, not just here in the US. I mean, if the NBA can find ways that guys can use this platform, they were talking about having them be able to change the names on the back of their jerseys, and, you know, they're painting floors with Black Lives Matter and all, but real actual change is what we need. So while I understand the whole changing the names on backs of jerseys and painting beautiful murals of Black Lives Matter all across courts and streets and all of that is great, but I want to talk about the Hawks in Fulton County came together to approve for State Farm Arena, where the Hawks play, to be a polling site for this upcoming election, right? So they're going to be able to bring in polling machines and still allow people to be, you know, cognizant of the protocols put in place for the coronavirus, right? So people will be able to be 6 feet apart. There will be enough space for people. And they're trying to combat what happened a couple of weeks ago, during some of the other state elections. Saw like 3 and 4 hour lines, and you saw doors closing early. So they're trying to combat that. I think it's important for other cities to take notice and implement something like this, where they utilize venues that are currently not being used by sports leagues because there's no sports happening, to not only pay lip service to the reform that's currently taking place, or the reform that people are requesting, but also facilitate in a way that makes sense and encourage in a way that makes sense. If you can make it safe for people to do this, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to. I'm not gonna pretend like I watch NASCAR every day. I'm not gonna pretend like I've ever actually even watched a NASCAR race. But there's been a lot of coverage about this Bubba Wallace story. If you have not seen the Bubba Wallace story, essentially NASCAR officials went into Bubba's garage stall and they saw what looked to be similar to a noose. And erring on the side of caution, they warned Bubba. They told him there was an FBI investigation into it. And so they tried to explain it and say that these things, it's like a pulley, like a pulley system where you open and close the garage stall, right? So that exists in every single stall for all of the NASCAR drivers, right? And so there's been a lot of back and forth about whether it was right for the NASCAR officials to be like, it's a noose, when it wasn't actually what they're saying, the FBI investigation is saying it wasn't actually a noose. But there have been a lot of questions about, well, what kind of knot was it? Was it really supposed to be a noose, or was it just like somebody being careless in the way that they tied, like all of these ridiculous points. Here's my issue, is that you have to be sensitive to that kind of stuff. This is also a sport that has allowed for years for the people to attend the sport, you know, donning Confederate flags. The situation with what looked like a noose happened maybe a week after there was this big push by NASCAR to eliminate the Confederate flag from the races, right? They didn't want people to bring Confederate flags and be waving them proudly. NASCAR tried to do this. I want to say I heard the report was like 2015 or something like that, where they tried to, you know, have a swap program. So people would bring in their Confederate flags and then NASCAR would swap them for an American flag, right? They tried to implement this years ago and it didn't work. Like, people just didn't participate, right? And so there's been a bigger push this time around to actually enforce it. And, you know, there's a lot of pushback, but to pretend like the Confederate flag is just a Southern thing and it's totally not racist in any way, shape, or form is to be disingenuous about where the Confederate flag actually comes from. There's been a lot of argument about this noose and whether, or this thing that looked like a noose, but here's the thing. Regardless of whether it looked like a noose or not, to the officials, the NASCAR officials who found it, it didn't look like the rest of the ones in the stall. For NASCAR officials to say that it looked like a noose, and it absolutely looked different than the rest of the knots, pulley systems, whatever the hell they are, in the rest of the garage stalls, that's a problem. They still have this whole Confederate flag issue. They have a pretty long way to go in, you know, being inclusive as a sport. All right, friends, thanks so much for joining me for this episode of Katherine's Quarters. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, you hit the subscribe button below. You know I will be talking about all of the NBA games when the NBA comes back in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, football season, prayerfully, is coming back. So you know we will have to get all of that news coming out of training camp and all that good stuff. So make sure you also follow me on Twitter, because you know I'll be tweeting about all of this as well. Check you guys later.